Okay, so today I wanted to tie a Griffith gnat for you. It's a very simple fly, but it's just a really good all-around dry fly pattern for imitating midges. It's one that I caught a lot of fish on when I was very first starting out fly fishing. So basically, I'll get to tying it, but what I first wanted to do was go through and explain kind of why I'll be wrapping some of the materials in the direction that I am. So I just wanted to demonstrate, because what I'm going to be doing with the fly is basically, it's known as reverse palmering. So what I'm first going to do is I will be wrapping my peacock curl forward, but I'll be counter wrapping that. When I say counter wrapping, that means I'm going to be winding it the opposite direction that I wind my thread. So I'm going to wind it forward, and I'm using the red wire to represent my peacock curl. So I'm going to wind that forward first, and then what I would do is tie that off, but I'm not going to worry about it. I'll just wrap a few by the hook of the eye, or eye of the hook. And then next I will be wrapping normal my hackle towards the back, and you'll notice basically what this does is it's going to spiral in between those wraps of hurl. And basically what this does is it helps minimize the amount of hackle or peacock curl fibers that you'll trap with that with the hackle as you wind it back. So you can see they're basically spiraled together. And now what you'll see me do is I will basically tie off the hackle with my ribbing, which is going to be just a piece of mono filament, and I'm going to wrap that forward. And now you're going to see what this does is it's going to cross over both my hackle and my hurl fibers at the same time. And what that's going to do is it's really going to protect those fibers. It's basically going to tie them in the whole length of the shank. So if along any point those fibers get broken, they won't unwind. So I just wanted to go through and show you that. It'll help clarify why I'm winding certain things the way I am. So the hook I'm going to be putting in a vise is a Mustad size 16, and that's the 94840. It's just a small dry fly hook. The thread I'll be using is UTC in the black, and that's the 70 denier. So I'll just get that started. Trim off my excess. Now I want to tie in my ribbing as I work my way back. So like I said, that's just going to be a length of 1 pound mono. Get my mono out of my way here, sticking to my bobbin. So we'll just keep that on top of the hook shank and work our way backward to the bend of the hook. And now we'll tie in our peacock curl tip first, but I like to trim off the first part of the tips because these fibers are pretty weak. And now I'll tie those in the length of the body. Just working our thread wraps forward. And now we'll stop right by the eye of the hook. And now we're going to take and wind both of our hurl fibers forward, counter wrapping them, remember, and we'll work our way forward along the shank. just touching turns as you go. That'll build up that nice fuzzy herl body. Okay, tie that off. Just do one wrap over the top, one wrap in front, one wrap over the top, and one wrap in front, and that should catch it in. And then trim off your herl fibers nice and close. Now we're going to take our hackle fiber, and this is just comes from a grizzly rooster cape. We're going to tie that in by the base, and what I've done to prepare that is just stripped away some of the fibers off of either side of the quill. Go ahead and tie that in. And then you want to fold that back, tie it down, and then you should be able to just hold your thread nice and tight and then break away the rest of the quill. And now I'm going to use hackle pliers since this is a pretty small feather. And when you're selecting a hackle fiber, you want to make sure that the length of the fibers on either side of the quill are about 1.5 times the width of the hook gap. So now we're going to wind the normal way I wind my thread, and we're going to basically palmer this hackle backwards. Just do a couple turns right behind the head area, and then just kind of space your wraps out. You can kind of play with how spaced out they are. You know, the more hackle fiber or wraps you have, the more hackle fibers you'll have on your fly, and the higher it'll float. But you know, you can just kind of play with it because you want some of that herl underneath to show through. So now wrap all the way back until you're basically on the shank of the hook. Now grab, while holding that hackle tight, you basically want to take and start a couple wraps right on the shank with your ribbing material, which is that mono. And then you can take your hackle pliers off. We'll come back to that little piece that's hanging there. And basically, we just want to work some wraps forward. And you can kind of wiggle it through to make sure you're not trapping too many of those hackle fibers. And then tie it in right at the head. And basically, as you tie in that mono, just concentrate on making a nice head as you wrap forward. And then we can go ahead and trim off our excess. Okay, so basically just to finish off the fly, I'm going to apply just a little bit of head cement right to my thread. You really only need about 1 centimeter to 1.5 centimeters of thread with your head cement on it. Just go ahead straight into a whip finish. Three turns should be plenty. And at this point, if you've caught in any fibers and they're pointing forward, you can go ahead and trim those off. Now, the moment of faith, we just want to see if we can go ahead and break this off. So just give it a couple wiggles, and then a tug, and it should break right off. And it shouldn't go anywhere because you have your ribbing that's basically tying in both the herl and the hackle, like I explained earlier. So that's basically your completed Griffith's gnat. You know, it floats pretty good on its own, but if you want to keep it floating even higher, you can use a floatant like gink. Best to put it on the night before and let it dry. Otherwise, just if you can, put it on about 5 minutes before, let it dry, and then go ahead and fish it. So, like I said, it's caught me a lot of fish, so I hope you get a chance to tie it, and hope it catches you fish. So enjoy.